My name is Eliana Sutton, and I am the Regional Judicial Officer for the Environmental Protection Agency in Denver, Colorado. Thank you all for coming today. I will be chairing the hearing, and in addition to myself, there are other EPA staff here to assist in this hearing to ensure everyone who wants to speak has the opportunity to do so. I'd like to introduce them at this time so that you know who they are before we get started. Douglas Minter is the manager of the Underground Injection Unit. There's Douglas by the door. Veloa Shea is also in the Underground Injection Unit in the Office of Water Protection. Lynn Newton, who is out at the registration table. You all met her when you came in. She also works in the Underground Injection Unit. And then we also have with us Lisa Vanderpool McLean, who's standing in the back there. She is our public affairs specialist in Office of Communications. And then we also have Cease Ashanafi, who is our community involvement specialist. So if you have any questions, please reach out to one of those folks. So we'll get started. On March 6, 2017, EPA issued 2 draft underground injection control, or UIC, area permits to PowerTech USA, Inc. for injection activities related to uranium recovery near Edgemont, South Dakota. The draft permits include a UIC Class 3 area permit for injection wells for the in situ recovery of uranium and a UIC Class 5 area permit for deep injection wells for disposal of treated in situ recovery processed waste fluids. The EPA is also proposing an aquifer exemption approval in connection with the draft UIC Class 3 area permit. We are here today to listen to your comments on these area permits and aquifer exemption. The public comment period is open until May 19th, 2017. In addition to this hearing today, there will be 3 more public hearings this week. Tomorrow, we will have another hearing here in this building, in this room. May 10th, we'll have a hearing in Hot Springs, South Dakota at the Mueller Center, and May 11th in Edgemont at the St. James Catholic Church. For more information on times and location, the address location, please visit the registration table or EPA's website. In a moment, I'll turn it over to Ms. Shea, who will explain in more detail what was proposed in the notice. But before I turn it over to her, I'd like to explain a little bit about how today's hearing will work. The first hour, from 1 to 2 today, was an opportunity for information gathering and question and answers. Starting with the hearing now, there will be no more question and answers as part of the official hearing. We will have the same setup tomorrow, so from 1 to 2, if you have questions, you can come and speak with folks about your specific questions, and then the hearing will start again at 2 tomorrow. We will take testimony from 2 to 5 today with a short break around 3:15 or so, and then again from 6 to 8 this evening. I will call speakers to the microphone here in front of me if you have filled out a card at the registration table. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name before you begin your testimony. In order to be fair to everyone, we will limit the testimony to 5 minutes each. We will signal to you when you have 1 minute left to speak, and then when 5 minutes has passed, I will ask you to complete your testimony. Please try to be as succinct and on point as you can. If I find that we are straying from the topic at hand, I will interrupt and ask that you please return to the issue before us. If we have time at the end and everyone has had the chance to speak and you have more to say than the 5 minutes you were given, then I will allow folks to get back up and finish their comments. After you finish your testimony, members of the panel may ask clarifying questions. We are not here to explain the basis of the proposal. The notice does that. nor can we exchange in a back and forth discussion of the proposal or respond to your comments during this hearing. The purpose of the hearing is to receive your input. We will consider and then respond to all comments received during this hearing, as well as all written comments in the final permits and aquifer exemption determination. We will not be answering any questions during the hearing. We are recording the hearing today, so be assured that your comments will be considered. The court reporter sitting to my left will be preparing a transcript of today's proceeding that will be available for anyone who wants to see it. The court reporter is independent of EPA, so if she is not looking at you while you are testifying, it is only because she is concentrating on your words to make sure she can get them into the transcript. Velois and I will be listening intently to your comments. The transcript is part of the record and will be included in the docket for this matter. The docket is where EPA collects materials it has considered in its action, including public comments. The docket is available on the internet for your review, or you can view a hard copy at EPA's Denver office. The transcript of this hearing will also be available in the docket. If you have written copies of your testimony, please give a copy to our staff at the registration table. This will be helpful as we prepare the transcript. If you have other written comments or supporting documentation, you may leave those at the registration table and we will make sure they are entered into the docket for this proposed action. You may also submit written comments directly to the docket through May 19th. Instructions for submitting comments can be found at the registration table. Once the final permits are issued and the aquifer exemption determination has been made, anyone who participated in the hearing by providing comments has the right to appeal the agency's decision to the Environmental Appeals Board. At this time, I will now ask Ms. Shea to provide more information on the permits.
Thank you, Judge Sutton. I wanted to thank you for being here today. I know that you are probably giving up maybe time at your job or time with your family or another thing that you could be doing, so thank you so much to every one of you for coming and participating in our public hearing. I would just like to provide a short presentation to provide context for the speakers that are going to be speaking here today. There was a lot of information on our website and not everyone had a chance to look at it, so I hope to have this brief groundwork laid and then we can get on to our main topic at hand, which is listening to what you all have to say. I just wanted to give you a little introduction on the Underground Injection Control Program. It is authorized under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The mission is to protect underground sources of drinking water by regulating injection activities through injection wells. Underground sources of drinking water are defined in our regulations as an aquifer or a portion of an aquifer which supplies a public water system, which contains sufficient quantity of groundwater to supply a public water system, and currently supplies drinking water for human consumption or contains fewer than 10,000 milligrams per liter total dissolved solids. The UIC program classifies injection wells under 6 well classes based on the type of injectate and the purpose for injection. Our UIC regulations allow us to exempt a portion of an underground source of drinking water under certain criteria in our regulation, and that's the background for our aquifer exemption that I will talk more about in a minute. So as Judge Sutton said, the EPA issued 2 draft area permits on March 6, 2017. One permit was for Class 3 injection wells for the purpose of uranium recovery in the Indian Kara aquifers. The second draft permit is a Class 5 area permit for deep injection wells that will be used to dispose of ISR waste fluids after they have been treated for the removal of radioactive, well, it has to meet radioactive and hazardous waste standards and regulations. The EPA is also proposing an aquifer exemption in conjunction with our Class 3 permit that would allow injection into uranium-bearing portions of the Indian Kara aquifers. We also released some additional documents to support the administrative record, and these include an environmental justice analysis, a cumulative effects analysis of the effects of all the injection wells, since we are authorizing more than one, and then a draft document that explains the process we have conducted so far and the considerations under tribal consultation. Our tribal consultation process is not over yet, it's ongoing. In fact, we consider it really has just started with the issuance of these draft permits. The EPA is requesting public comment and review of all the documents up here, but of course the most important ones are the draft permits and the requirements there. There are other agencies that are active at this site. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has issued a materials license for the project. The South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources has proposed issuance of a large mine permit. They have not completed their public involvement process yet. The Bureau of Land Management has a plan of operations. I don't think they have approved that yet. And then there's also an additional groundwater discharge permit under the DENR that has been proposed as an alternative disposal method for treated ISR waste fluid. So this is just a map of the area. I'm pointing out the permit boundary, and it's along the South Dakota-Wyoming state line. The Fall River Custer County line falls in the middle of the project area. There's the Dewey area and the Burdock area. There are 4 proposed well fields in the Dewey area. Some of them are kind of hidden. They're the green ones hidden in there, 4 total. And then 10 well fields in the Burdock area. The green dashed line is the aquifer exemption boundary that exempts the portion inside the green dashed line so that injection might occur for the recovery of uranium. These are the location of the 2 proposed Class 5 deep wells. So this is a blow-up of a well field in the Dewey area. I just want to give you an idea of what the configuration of the injection wells and production wells would look like. On each corner is a proposed location for an injection well with a production well in the middle. The EPA will regulate both production wells and injection wells as injection wells, so they're both types of wells are subject to the permit requirements because they often change roles during the process. This line around the outside of the well field is called the perimeter monitoring well, which makes sure contamination does not move out of the intended injection area. And then there are underlying and overlying monitoring wells above and below the injection zone. I just want to say a few things about the quality of the Indian Cara water. It is an underground source of drinking water, but it is high in sulfate and manganese, and sometimes in some locations high in iron. People who drink the water usually use reverse osmosis to make it potable, to make it taste good. And then in the areas where the uranium deposits occur, there's also high levels of gross alpha radium and radon. So the natural radioactive decay of uranium results in radium, and then that quickly decays into a series of radon and daughter products that emit alpha radiation. Now, alpha radiation does not penetrate the human skin. However, if they are released into the air, like during a shower, it goes into your lungs, and it can do damage there because you don't have the protective layer of your skin. So these areas that we're exempting do have high gross alpha radium and radon. After this process is over and the well field groundwater restoration is complete, and that's regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, these areas, if wells are completed there, they can be treated using the same type of treatment, reverse osmosis, as before mining occurred. This is a vertical cross-section of the Indian Cara aquifers, and you see the Fall River Formation and then the Chilson Formation, and this is where the uranium deposits occur. And this is the vertical extent of the aquifer exemption area. So this is a diagram of, you see the well fill pattern here that you saw before. This actually explains the ISR process with a cross section so you can see what's happening in the ground. The lixiviant is injected, which is composed of Indian Cara groundwater with added carbon dioxide and oxygen. It goes into the uranium deposit, mobilizes the uranium, and then is brought to the surface through production wells. Uranium is removed in the central processing plant, and then the lixiviant is recycled back into the aquifer where the uranium deposit is located. So most of this water is recycled. Only a small percentage is lost from the Indian Cara aquifer, and that is called the bleed. So I just want to emphasize that if these permits were to be issued as final, that does not mean that Power Tech can begin injection right away. They have to do extensive characterization of the geology and hydrology for each well field. The crucial question is, can uranium-bearing fluids be contained in the injection zone? One of the tests that they have to conduct is called a pump test. So this line represents the water level in an aquifer under natural conditions. A pump test would mean that a pumping well is drawing water out of the intended injection zone. It lowers the water table, and this would show that there is adequate confinement above and below the injection zone, and that's the crucial question we want to know. The other aspect is if they're able to withdraw, if they're able to depress the groundwater level, then that means they can also have horizontal confinement, and that's what we would be looking for before we would allow injection. So this slide represents what we would want to see under the operating conditions. If this water table is depressed in the area where the injection and recovery is occurring, then we know that the inward flow of groundwater is helping to contain horizontally the injected fluids. Oh, I forgot I did those arrows that represent the inward direction of groundwater flow. So this slide just emphasizes again that if we were ever to issue a final permit, that doesn't mean injection could occur. There's a whole list of testing and requirements that we would want to see before we would ever authorize injection. And I just brought out a few here. We would want them to map all the plugged and abandoned exploration drill holes within that perimeter monitoring well you saw on the other slide, and identify the ones that had to be replugged. We want to see copies of any new or historic drill logs that had been annotated to show the presence of a fault, fracture, or any joint for any drill holes located inside the perimeter monitoring well. I do have to let you know that UIC regulations do allow ISR activities to occur in areas where there may be a breach in a confining zone. But in these situations, extra monitoring is required around the breaches. And what this would look like, I used an abandoned borehole here as the example, but the more likely scenario would be a fracture, but that just makes a better graphic to understand. We would require a lot more monitoring wells right in this area to assure that this is the injection zone, to assure that we would not be seeing any fluids move out of the injection zone. If that's detected, then it has to be remediated right away, and then we would revisit whether or not we would continue to allow injection in this area if they cannot contain the injection zone fluids where it belongs. One of the most important aspects of our permit is the post-restoration monitoring. This is new to the industry. It's not required at this time, but as EPA's first permit, we believe that it was necessary in order to protect groundwater. So we see our aquifer exemption boundary, which is located 120 feet away from the perimeter monitoring well. After restoration is complete in this wellfield area, as approved by the NRC, that's when our monitoring begins. And what we want to see is that no ISR contaminants cross this aquifer exemption boundary, because this is a USDW, underground source of drinking water, and this is protected. So we have established a rather complicated set of scenarios for this post-restoration monitoring to occur. But it is more protective than the permits we see today that are actually being used. That's a good comment to make. Okay, so, I went too fast. So it involves establishing baseline. That's a comment we heard during the NRC procedure, that baseline needed to be a better process. So we've taken that into account. And then, as I said, we begin the monitoring as soon as the well field restoration is complete. And if it turns out contaminants are crossing this aquifer exemption boundary, then more treatment has to be done and the cleanup has to occur and more monitoring wells have to be installed down gradient. So now I'm going to talk about the Class 5 deep injection wells for a moment. They're Class 5 because, according to UIC regulations, they are injecting above an underground source of drinking water, which is the Madison Aquifer. We are still using the Class 1 construction standards for the well because those are the most important or most stringent well construction requirements. As with the Class 3 permit, PowerTech would have to do a lot of testing to make sure that injection activity would not cause migration into underground sources of drinking water. They also have to demonstrate that the Mona Lisa Aquifer is not an underground source of drinking water. So we anticipate that its total dissolved solids is less than 10,000 milligrams per liter, but we don't know for sure until that well is completed. If it turns out that the Mona Lisa Aquifer is an underground source of drinking water, then the permit cannot move any further. The permit isn't usable at that point because we do not authorize at this time any injection into a USDW. And also the ejectate must be treated below radioactive waste and hazardous waste standards. This just shows a cross-section of the geology in that area. This is the Precambrian basement. This is the proposed Mona Lisa injection zone. This is the confining zone that separates the injection zone within the Mona Lisa from the Madison Aquifer. This is the Indian Kara group aquifers up here, where you see uranium deposits have been shown here. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Mona Lisa. You've probably heard about the breccia pipes, and I wanted to explain a little bit how that happens. The Mona Lisa Aquifer contains a lot of anhydrite, which is a soluble sulfate mineral. And near that Mona Lisa outcrop, the Madison Aquifer is very high pressure and will push through and actually dissolve this anhydrite. So in areas where the Mona Lisa Aquifer is being used for drinking water, this anhydrite has been dissolved away, and you're actually getting good low sulfate water out of the Mona Lisa. And this represents where these breccia pipes are forming, and then down gradient, the anhydrite is still in place. And that's one of the things we're looking for in our permit characterization. This shows a map view. The dissolution zone is occurring 6 miles away from the Dewey Burdock site. Here's the Mona Lisa outcrop, and this is where that anhydrite that you saw on the last slide is actually dissolving away. And here it's intact, so that means that the water is high in sulfate, high in total dissolved solids, and most likely not an underground source of drinking water. Another way to look at the confining zones and whether the anhydrite is present is this map shows the dissolution zone that you saw on the last slide. There have been a number of oil and gas test wells that have been drilled throughout this area, and there are not a lot of logs to look at to make sure that that anhydrite is in place and you have a good confining zone. So this extra investigation of the area is more than we usually have in our deep well permits because we want to assure that there's a good confining zone that is continuous over the area. And I think I already mentioned most of this. We looked at the drill. We'll be looking at the drill logs from the deep Class 5 wells themselves. We looked at the plugged oil and gas wells shown in the previous slide. We're also looking at the groundwater levels in the Minaloosa and the Madison. As I mentioned, the Madison is a very high pressure aquifer, and its water level is actually above the ground surface over a lot of the area. The Minaloosa is not as a high pressured aquifer, so one of the things we'll be looking at is the groundwater level in the Madison and the groundwater level in the Minaloosa. And if they're different, we know there's a good confining zone in place. We also look at the sulfur concentration. Oh, wrong button, sorry. The sulfate concentration, we expect it to be high because the anhydrite's there. If it's very low, then we know the anhydrite is not there. And then also looking at the Madison and Minaloosa water chemistry, further near the outcrop where the Minaloosa is being used for drinking water, its water chemistry is very similar to that of the Madison. Down where the Dewey burdock site is, we expect to see it to be very different, and that will also confirm the confining zone. I just wanted to mention the treatment and storage ponds. Radium is the only radioactive waste expected to occur in the ISR waste fluids. It's removed by mixing it with barium chloride, and then it's placed in these settling ponds where the radium is precipitated out. Then it moves into the outlet ponds, and this is the treated water that would go to the Class 5 injection wells. And I just want to emphasize again how important these public hearings are to the EPA, and once again express my appreciation for you being here. The reason we issue the draft permits in the first place is that our regulations require us to act on a permit application and issue a draft permit to begin the public review process to get input. Your comments do matter. We're going to read every one of them. We're recording them in detail as you speak them, and they have the potential to change the permit conditions that you see today. Our regulations require a 30-day public comment period. Ours has been quite a bit longer because we realize we have given you a lot of information to read over. And our regulations say that we have a public hearing if we hear there's interest, but we knew there was interest and we wanted to provide a number of locations for you to attend as conveniently as possible to where you live. So that's why we're holding 5 days of public hearings. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, I'll start calling speakers. The first speaker is Floyd Buffalo. If you can come to the podium.
I come here on behalf of the Great Sioux Nation of the 1851 and 68 treaty. I am a treaty chief of the Oglalas on the Red Cloud. I'm a descendant. And what I'm here for is that during Obama's administration, under the United States Constitution, Article 6 is the supreme law of this country after 1492. We gave a trespass authority under 1851 to the European American immigrants to trespass the West Coast. We did not give them the water rights or mineral rights. And under this declaration, we reminded Obama. So as of August 23rd, 2013, Obama and executive order acknowledged that. And the declaration we have here is the members of the Cheyenne River, Crow Creek, Fort Peck, Lower Brule, Oglala, Pine Ridge, Rosebud, Standing Rock, Yankton, and Santee. This Treaty Council represents the Great Sioux Nation of the Black Hills, and we own the property of the 1868 territory, which is the Black Hills. So therefore, the declaration here I have is a declaration to invoke inherent rights and authority under the 1851 and 68 Fort Laramie treaties over mineral exploration and extraction, over energy and fuel pipelines of a kind, the unauthorized ceding of land in the name of the parks and other matters, to all United States and federal and other officials listed on the attached service list and the public at large. They invoke inherent rights and authority over mineral exploration and extraction, over energy and fuel pipelines of any kind, and the unauthorized ceding of land in the name of parks under the 51 and 68 Fort Laramie treaties. And if you look at the United States Article 6, they will clearly tell you that North America is a ceded land under treaty. And in order, is a direct inherent rights is Native people. Underneath that is an agreement between the United States government and the Native people. They call that Bible and the pipe transaction, sacred pipe. That is the agreement which is called Article 6 Treaty, to live here, not to extract mineral. We own the mineral. And furthermore, I'd like to remind you that I will side with the Clearwater Act here. And we're not going to go through the federal. We're going to go through United Nations Treaty. And while United Nations World Court automatically suspends the state action and federal. Because under the Treaty Act, the federal is the second one. And the last is the state. That's the order under the United States Constitution. So you need to know your U.S. Constitution and Treaty Council before you start trying to. What I foresee here is a privatization of all these uranium areas we have under Trump. And what I see coming here is condemnation of all your home folks in Black Hills to extract the minerals, gas and oil and zeolite and uranium we're sitting on. And let's not bother the aquifer with a lot of fairy tales, because that's our livelihood. That's what savings. Don't mix oil and water and drink it together, or go without water. No uranium. I'm going to put a stop to it under the treaty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buffalo. Next, if we can have Marvin Kammerer.
I hope my time didn't start back there, because I've gone past the age of 80 years in this great land, this beautiful land, this drought area land that you people are trying to spoil. You people don't look old enough to begin to understand the relationship of water in our heritage. The heritage of the Washichu came later than the Native American. I am a Washichu. I'm a cowboy. Used to be. But don't ever sell our water or the use of our water to a foreign corporation or a foreign entity. That's our water. And by God, we'll fight for it. We send people over to Iraq. We send people around the world to fight for corporate interests. To hell with them. Bring them back right here. We'll fight for what is ours. The amount of water that is maybe being permitted here, it's a tremendous amount of water. 9,000 gallons a minute for 20 years, 24 hours a day if they want. At 15 gallons a cow will water 860,000 head a day. And we, who live in a drought-stricken area, our dams are dry or almost dry. Several years ago at the last drought, we had to dig a hole 2,260 feet deep into the Indian Kara the one they want to pull out of now. And it waters our stock in wintertime. And when the dams are dry and empty, we had to put in miles of water line. But the Indian Terra is a blessed gift. And every other one of these bodies of water under there, we don't know what's going on under there. It's a suggestion. It's a gimmick. The upheaval of the hills is still going on. And when you stick poison water back, and don't tell me it can be cleaned up. It's never been cleaned up.
Thank you.
And I don't want it, the water you're drinking right there, right now. When they get through cleaning it up, can I bring you up a gallon of it and have you sit there and drink it while we're giving testimony? You know better. It's our water. It's God's gift. We have to be careful with it. Look how we're poisoning water all around the world. Simply for the mode of profit to somebody. It's our water. It doesn't belong to Japanese or Chinese. It doesn't belong to a corporate interest anywhere. It belongs to us. My Native American brothers and sisters and us ranchers who are sitting here trying to survive. All of you eat steak once in a while, I'm sure. We produce it. We produce good ranch kids who can go to your cities and their leaders. They pick things up and get things done. And they do the same at home. If you put a bucket of water and a bucket of gold out in the middle of a pasture, and in a cage we lock somebody up for about 4 days, 5 or 6, I know where he's going when he gets out. Because he hasn't been fed any water or anything. Gold don't amount to much when you're thirsty. And I've drank some sour water. That Indian Terra is not all that they try to say, and you people are trying to say it is. And off to the near that area, when they force this damn injection back in and they're wanting extra wells, I question seriously why. In that area, there's a munitions dump. There's mustard gas and others still laying under there. They don't know how much. We brought it in here in World War II and after. When we force this pressurized water in there, we move it. Either it goes into another aquifer, and it migrates. And if it gets into this area and saturates where all these poisons are laying, you'll have the biggest boom you ever saw. Let's get smart for once. Let's not chase after the corporate entities. Let's look after ourselves. Let's try to clean up its own environment.
Mr. Cameron,
Don't
your
dirty
time is
ours.
up. I need to ask you to wrap up, please.
I'm going to give you a written sheet, and I don't write well and I don't type. I'm an old man and I'm not going to learn. But I'll give you a handwritten sheet by the 19th, and I hope you'll read it, because it comes from in here. Granddad walked in here in 1880 with a freight train, and when the homestead had opened up, he filed, and we're still here. And by God, we're not leaving, and you're not going to poison our water. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kammerer. Next, Carol Hayes.
Hi, my name is Carol Hayes.
Ms. Hayes?
Yeah,
Sorry, I need to. This
be able to hear your words, so if you
Oh,
can speak
okay.
to her, please.
I can give it to her in writing also.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm Carol Hayes, and I live near Nemo, South Dakota. My theme today will be lies, cowardice, laziness, hypocrisy, cynicism, native rights, and Azarga's and the EPA's role in environmental destruction or protection. First, let us say that there are good people in the EPA who want to do good things and have done a few good things. Perhaps some are in this room. But my message to you, the EPA, today is don't be lazy. Don't be a coward. Stand up to Trump's war on the environment. Be like the employees of the Badlands Park Service who posted the truth about climate change on the website. When you rule on this draft permit, speak truth to power. Today, those of you from the EPA will be hearing or reading some good science and some bad science. The good science will be from community members opposed to pollution of our precious Black Hills aquifers. The bad science, call it alternative science, will be from PowerTech. EPA, believe the community members. Follow up on the sources we provide you and decide to stand for the truth. That the in situ leaching, not recovery, in situ leaching will allow poisons into Black Hills aquifers. Learn these truths, that the Black Hills aquifers are permeable, despite the testimony of the woman today. They leak into each other, so there is no way to sequester the toxic byproducts of in situ leaching. And please, friends, never call it in situ recovery. It is in situ leaching. And second, learn that ISL may use horrific chemicals like sulfuric acid to do its dirty work. Let's talk about hypocrisy and cynicism. It is breathtakingly cynical for Azarga and other mining forces to stand before us and say that they will clean up after their mining activities. They cannot restore the leached water into its prior condition, and they know it. Consider this quote from the U.S. Geological Survey. To date, no remediation of an ISL operation in the U.S. has successfully returned the aquifer to baseline conditions. And PowerTech, they're crooks to boot. Their stock is worth pennies, and Platinum Partners, which owns 30% of Azarga stock, is under indictment that basically describes Platinum Partners as a Ponzi scheme, according to the Rapid City Journal and other sources. So even if PowerTech intended to use the most advanced monitoring and cleanup methods on the Dewey Burdock site, they wouldn't be able to afford it. The people of Custer and Fall River counties will be left with toxic water and the bill to pay for it. Pay for it with the health of their children, their stock, and their livelihoods. Now let's talk about the opposite of cowardice, courage. Let's talk about what real environmental protection looks like. I think it looks like the native folks who stood tall at Standing Rock, defending the earth and the water against scum like the Dakota Access Pipeline, and those who stood against the KXL pipeline as well. We here in this room need to follow the leadership of those proud native folks and their allies to defeat Dewey Burdock. We community members here in this room are all allies against environmental destruction. We invite you, the employees of the EPA, to stand for Mother Earth, to stand for clean water, to stand for the principles that probably caused you to seek employment there in the first place. Stand against these mining permits.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Protect our water. Protect our water. Stand up. Protect our water. Protect
I'd like to get back to testimony so that we have time for everyone to speak, but thank you. Next, if we can have Michael Herrera.
I'm standing here against PowerTech Azarga today. I volunteered for Dakota Rural Action a few years back on a petition against the license for their access to the aquifer. I've lived here since the age of 10. I live south of Hermosa right now. Hermosa's groundwater is contaminated with radium. It's a small amount. The water's still safe to drink. Just putting that out there. Further south in Edgemont, the groundwater is contaminated from uranium tailings from the mining that started back in the 50s. Yeah, so now PowerTech Azarga wants to come in and open up their own project. PowerTech has no experience and hasn't drilled or mined anything, according to the sources I've read on the internet. They own over $10 million in uranium reserves. To give PowerTech access to one of the main water supplies for the Black Hills, the Madison Aquifer, sounds dangerous and ridiculous. I don't know how this company got here and elevated up with so much privilege. I know they have connections with the state government somehow. I don't know all the facts. They hired Mark Hollenbeck, former mayor of Edgemont. Hollenbeck, he said he believes it's ridiculous that they have to wait so long to be able to get to work on this. And I just want to say, have you considered the consequences of what could happen? What do you expect? Do you think you could just come in here and open up shop? And yeah, what it really boils down to is it's all about the money. I like it here in South Dakota for a couple reasons. One being that we're far from most major cities, so we don't have much traffic and pollution. Two, I can enjoy the peace and quietness, especially at night. I'm from Southern California. That isn't something that we get to enjoy there. There is a survival community that just opened up outside in the Edgemont area. It's called Vivos X Point. They have a big settlement where the military used to store bombs. They've turned the bomb bunkers into houses and created some other features like recreational areas and a shooting range. They dug wells to provide them with their water. I think it's interesting that there's a culture growing popular among people here in the state surrounding self-sufficiency and living off the grid. Society is getting bigger. Eventually, we're going to be struggling with resources. Already, we get most of our things from outside the U.S. If things were to fall apart tomorrow, how would people react? With so many people living around the poverty line, like in Pine Ridge, things would be real bad without any place to get food and water. So we would have to do these things ourselves. Is it worth to have PowerTech Azarga come in and start mining? They want to convince us that the operation is going to be safe and nothing bad is going to happen. Well, it happens. Nothing is perfect. Some accident will definitely occur. To them, it's nothing, and yeah, they might care, but it's our future generations that is what's really important. You can look at the facts on Crow Butte, Nebraska. Chemical, I think that's how you say it. The company mining was underreporting a lot of incidents. Who's to say PowerTech will do the same? Can we trust them to watch over their own actions as rookies in the mining field? Let's not do this. Let's keep this place clean and free from the industrial footprint. We're not exactly ready to ditch modern sources of energy and move on, but people are innovating and finding new ways to do things. Uranium is used for energy and weapons. Nuclear energy, we already know, is risky. Look at Chernobyl in Russia and see how long that place has been closed off. These are long-term problems, and when they happen, it's over. Forget about it. This company isn't going to do us any good. Just think, when they tell us everything is going to be all right or criticize us, saying we're misleading the facts, I want you to remember, it's all about the money. And that money isn't going in our pocket. And that money is going in their pockets, not ours.
Thank you, Mr. Herrera. Rick Bell.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Bell. I'm a resident of Rapid City. I'm a professional engineer in the state of South Dakota. I'm chairperson of the local Black Hills chapter of Dakota Rural Action and president of a local firm, Sustainable Environmental Energy Engineering LLC. Now, before moving here and starting my own company, I worked for more than 40 years in the environmental cleanup field for a variety of industrial companies and as a consultant. My remediation experience is global. It's led me around the world working on projects on 5 continents. I worked for here in the U.S. on private cleanups, as well as state and federal CERCLA and RCRA sites. I've installed thousands of groundwater monitoring wells, injection and recovery wells, and I understand that the most critical component of the work that I've done has been in groundwater monitoring in all of its facets, including analytical data, data management, risk assessments, etc. In addition, while employed by a chemical company which had multiple production facilities in the Gulf Coast, I became a deep well injection expert, and I've installed or operated many wells, Class 1 injection wells in Texas, Louisiana, and Florida. Now, I'm speaking to you today in opposition to EPA's approval of PowerTech's Class 3 injection well permit. It's my fervent hope that this permit will be denied or at least materially changed, modified substantially. With all my industrial and consulting background, perhaps you're surprised that I'm here on the side of permit denial. But many, many times I've sat across the table from EPA representatives or your contractors arguing, or should I say discussing, whether or not we had adequate contamination. Excuse me, let me go back here. The pros and cons of a particular set of actions regarding the proposed cleanup actions that my company or client had proposed. And more often than not, it's come down to many questions about whether we had sufficient data to demonstrate that groundwater contamination plume had been adequately characterized and whether the risk assessment assumptions and conclusions were justified. We were required often by various regulators to install more and more wells, to collect more and more data, and understand better the fate and transport of contaminants in the subsurface. And one thing that I've learned over my career is that it's impossible to know with absolute certainty where and how groundwater is actually flowing. Now it seems kind of ironic that I'm on the other side of the table, the EPA is on the other side of the table from us in this situations. I find that you're recommending, I find myself on the side of recommending that you deny this final Class 3 injection well permit. And you, the EPA, whose mission it is to protect human health and the environment, seem to be on the other side of the side of a foreign industrial company who's likely to contaminate our groundwater. I just don't believe that this proposed course of action has adequately demonstrated that it will be able to protect human health and the environment. Let me explain why. We've already heard about the ISL injection of leachate into thousands of wells in the Ankara Aquifer, where the uranium exists naturally, and it would be artificially dissolved with this leachate along with many other heavy metals. The leachate solution is then theoretically captured and pumped to the surface where it's processed. However, once uranium and other heavy metals are mobilized in this fashion, it's absolutely impossible to guarantee capture. I've seen the cartoons that have been put onto the board here about the typical 5-spot well field pattern. This is a dream that someone had sitting behind their desk or perhaps even in a laboratory under ideal conditions. But I can tell you it doesn't work in the real world where heterogeneous conditions exist. In geology such as this, I've put in a well that's been able to produce less than 0.1 gallon per minute, and 10 feet away, it's produced for 30 or 40 gallons per minute. So we don't understand what's going on in the subsurface, and we need to do a lot better job. These interconnected fractures and fissures make it impossible to predict with any certainty about how these fluids are actually flowing in the subsurface. And once the recovery wells are turned off, then this mobilized mass of uranium and heavy metals will continue to flow unabated in the subsurface. So it's my opinion that it's pretty well guaranteed that if this final permit is granted, a huge groundwater contamination problem would be created. And despite permit conditions that requires our Zarga to restore the pre-operation conditions, we've already heard today it's not possible. No operation has ever been able to do that. So in conclusion, I would like to ask the EPA that if you do grant this Class 3 injection well permit, that you insist upon two things. Before approving them, much more work should be done with pilot wells in this location and transparency with regard to distributing the results of those tests. Secondly, I would ask that PowerTech Azarga must place a large sum of money, I'm thinking millions of dollars, in reserve or an escrow account for the eventual cleanup of this site that is likely to occur. So I would ask you guys to really consider some more thought go into this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Don Kelly.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Kelly. I'm a retired pathologist living in the Black Hills. I'd simply like to report to you that in 2014, after a discussion of the ISL uranium mining technique and the potential risks to South Dakota aquifers, the South Dakota Medical Association adopted a resolution opposing uranium mining in the state. It was felt that the risks outweighed any potential benefits to the residents of the state. In this action, South Dakota followed the example of the Colorado Medical Society, which also went on record to oppose uranium mining. I think physicians in the region are concerned about the public health consequences of any prolonged increase over background radiation exposure, even if small, experienced by humans or food animals, and are concerned as well about the chemical toxicity of uranium and other heavy metals freed during the ISL procedure. Proven and potential cross-communication and cross-contamination among aquifers pose a significant risk to health, which the proponents of ISL uranium mining have no way of providing absolute protection against. That's basically my comments. I do have a copy of the resolution adopted by the Medical Society. Be happy to leave that with you. It's got all the references about health risks.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Next, we can have Julie Lantis.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking in opposition to granting the permits. My family has been involved in ranching interests in western South Dakota for many years. And we've been through more than one drought cycle, as Mr. Kammerer referred to. Every drop of water, every acre of grazing land is so important to us. We get our drinking water from the Madison Formation. So these matters affect several generations. We are hoping that our grandchildren will be able to continue to ranch, but there again, they need water and they need grazing land. Mr. Hollenbeck says that when the water is cleaned up, it's basically like salt water that they will put back into the aquifers. Why would we want to put anything back into our aquifers that isn't pure water? The amount of water they're taking out, 9,000 gallons per minute, is a huge, huge amount of water. And if you've ever stood day after day looking at the sky waiting for it to rain, that amount of water is very scary to us. So that's the reason I am opposed to granting these permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Kim Kelly?
My name is Kim Kelly. I've lived in western South Dakota for 55 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to express my concerns about Azarga PowerTech's plan to mine uranium at the Dewey Burdock site. I don't believe that ISL uranium mining is a beneficial use of our groundwater, or that disposal of wastewater via land application or in Class 5 disposal wells is in the public interest. 3 areas of the proposed project that most concern me are, first, the fate of contaminated mine waste materials; secondly, unrealistic aquifer restoration plans following ISL uranium mining; and third, the choice of uranium as an energy source. My first concern is the toxic waste produced by ISL uranium mining. According to Azarga PowerTech, the proposed radium settling ponds lie at the base of the Beaver Creek Basin and the Pass Creek Subbasin, watersheds that drain approximately 1,400 square miles. 3 miles downstream from the proposed ponds, these basins empty into the Cheyenne River. Radium is a dangerous waste material, and little information is provided about how pond leaks, spills, and potential flooding will be dealt with. The proposed well fields are located approximately 2 miles southeast of a large fault named the Dewey Fault. So far, this fault is known to extend approximately 16 miles east and 4 miles west of the proposed ISL mine site. The consequences of an excursion of contaminated groundwater along a fault impacted my community when 2 containers of ethylene dibromide, a pesticide used to control the mountain pine beetle, was reportedly disposed of near the U.S. Forest Service Nemo Work Center in the mid-1970s. Plumes of groundwater contaminated with this probable human carcinogen continue to follow a fault that communicates with Box Elder Creek, upstream from a well-documented karst formation in the Madison limestone, and down into the Madison Aquifer below Rapid City. Costs for water transport and water treatment were considered to be too high when the EDB was discovered in regional domestic wells in 1997, and so for the past 19 years, the community has depended upon 1 remote community well and 2 domestic wells for its entire water supply. If such an excursion were to enter the Dewey Fault, the scale of the problem could be staggering. I believe that Azarga PowerTech is overconfident in stating they will simply pump back excursions of lixiviant that occur. My second concern has to do with the aquifer restoration plan. According to Azarga PowerTech, the company proposes to restore the contaminated aquifers by treating water pumped from production wells using reverse osmosis membranes under high pressure, thus removing 90% of the dissolved constituents. Restored water will then be returned to injection wells in the RO or reject. The brine will be disposed of in the Class 5 wells. The company has concluded that minimal benefit, if any, is derived from the groundwater sweep prior to deep well injection, and suggests eliminating groundwater sweep as an unnecessary, ineffective, and consumptive step in the restoration process. According to the EPA, high-pressure reverse osmosis can only be employed after groundwater sweeping because high concentrations of contaminants during the initial stages of the restoration process tend to disrupt and rupture the RO membranes. My third concern is the assumption that ISL uranium mining will contribute to clean energy. In 2002, the Bush-Cheney administration's Nuclear Power 2010 program provided large subsidies for a handful of Generation 3+ demonstration plants. The expectation that these nuclear power plants would be built and come online by 2010 has not been met. Azarga PowerTech has also stated that the company would like to sell uranium oxide on the world market, especially to the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. Nearly all of the reactors that have been built or are under construction in these countries are light water reactors. The hope that breeder reactors would replace light water reactors and that more economic means of reprocessing spent fuel would be developed has not been realized. At present, it is generally found to be cheaper to mine new uranium, which is then used in a once-through process that creates spent fuel, the radioactive waste that is considered to be the Achilles heel of nuclear energy. The nuclear industry uses uranium in the least efficient way and is fraught with dangerous waste and high costs associated with construction, operation, repair, decommissioning, and cleanup after accidents. Various agencies have tried
Ms.
to
Kelly, your
estimate...
time is up, so I'll need you to wrap up.
1 minute?
Quickly.
The estimated length for primary sources of uranium, assuming a once-through cycle, is said to be 42 years. Thus, in order to provide nuclear power for a period ending during the lifetimes of many alive today, we leave permanent potential increased contamination of soils, river systems, and aquifers. Throughout our human evolution, humans have discovered, developed, and abandoned myriad energy sources. Whale oil among them, notoriously. If we run out of or choose to stop using oil, coal, natural gas, or uranium, we can make use of many other energy sources. There are no alternatives to water.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Next, Mark Weiniger. Sorry, got that wrong.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Weiniger. I'm from Vermillion, South Dakota, and I'm the political chair of the South Dakota Sierra Club. And I am very impressed with the level of expertise of the people who have testified this afternoon. I don't share their level of expertise, but perhaps I share their level of passion. You see, I'm a computer scientist. I'm not a rancher. I'm not a member of the Ocheti Shakumi. But I do value life. And as I understand it, your mission is to protect the human health and the environment. We are here today to discuss allowing a foreign-owned corporation to mine for uranium and to drill a total of 8 boreholes. Now, normally, you only need 1. Part of what I heard this morning makes me wonder if there's more than 8 required for what this corporation wants to do. There are already over 15,000 abandoned uranium mines within 15 western states. 75% of these are in federal and tribal land. 10 million people live within 50 miles of an abandoned uranium, I've got to move this, sorry, of an abandoned uranium mine. No existing federal law requires the cleanup of these hazardous waste sites. Most of these abandoned uranium mines were established under the General Mining Law of 1872 and remain dangerously radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years. We will all be long gone. The public health threat they pose grows greater the longer they are left abandoned. This threat to our health is invisible. It seeps into our water. It contaminates the livestock. It is carried in the wind for hundreds of miles, and there is no dose of radiation that is harmless. listen to these good people here today and work to clean up every abandoned uranium mine in the nation before considering a new one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canada. I said thank you. Next, if we can have Chloe Olson.
Hi, my name is Chloe Olson, and I am an environmental engineering student at the School of Mines. First, I'd like to say I am a proponent of nuclear energy because I think it's a clean alternative to fossil fuels, but I do not support the mining of uranium in the Black Hills. My main issue is with PowerTech. There's a lot of things I could say about this company, but I thought that I would focus on their financial economic analysis because I know a lot of people are interested in the money aspect of uranium drilling. In 2015, they estimated that they could sell uranium for $65 a pound with a price of $6.53 for federal tax and $18.86 for the mining costs. They projected that they would mine 9.7 million pounds and make a profit of over $300 million. In 2015, though, the long-term price for uranium was $46.29, and the stock market price was $36.55. I'm not really sure where the $65 came from. I also have the last 5 years of the uranium prices. As you can see, they're all declining. Nothing has gone up in the last 5 years. Today's prices for the long term is $33.12, and the long-term pricing, for those who don't know, it's just a judgment for uranium companies just to think that that might be a price in the month, but it's not the actual stock market price. So the actual stock market price right now is $23.50 a pound. If they could sell at this price and take out the federal tax and the mining costs, it would be a negative $18 million to mine for uranium, which doesn't really make any sense. I'm really concerned about this overestimation. I think that that's the company trying to win us over because they are foreign. I also am concerned that they don't care about our livelihood because they are not from South Dakota or even the United States. Another thing that really bothers me is their current stock price is 32 cents per share. That's a penny stock. This company has no no financial backing, and if they did spill into our aquifer that provides water for 59,000 people in South Dakota, they would not have the amount of money to try and clean it up. So I hope that you take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Winia Locke.
My name is Winia. I'm from Standing Rock. First and foremost, I should be able to address you in my own language since our language was the first language ever spoken here. So I request that the EPA, the next time you come into our homelands, to bring a translator and a transcriber for the Lakota language. We have 2.5 drinkable water for the whole world. We are currently fighting pipelines, copper mines, uranium mines. Out of that 2.5 drinkable water for the whole world is 1.7 groundwater. Our water aquifers are precious because there's no way to refill them once they have been dried up or contaminated. We are requesting that the EPA clean up the uranium mines that are currently have been permitted and the old uranium mines that are still open to clean up the mess that they have already created. We're also requesting, as someone from Standing Rock, to have true and meaningful consultation with tribes. To just sit there and listen, but to have true meaningful consultation with tribally approved archaeologists and tribally approved surveyors because the Black Hills belong to us. They are historical, they are spiritual significant to our people, and we stand in opposition of the uranium mine. Miniwichoni, water is life.
Thank you, Ms. Loft. Jacob, your last name I'm probably not going to get right. Herleg? Apologize up front.
How Petuashe, Wamblishe, Machiapielo. I'm Crying Eagle, but by the society, I am Jacob Helvik. I am from the Oglala Band of the Lakota Nation. And I would first like to say that y'all are crazy for even entertaining this at all, period. Inherently, the society has, since the get-go, pretty much been inherent conflict with what would be the betterment of humanity, our animals, plants, trees, and Unchi-Maka, Mother Earth as a whole. And one consistent fact that I think has just kind of sprouted out of virtually every single thing, whether it be pipelines or uranium mines or anything, all that, they pretty much consistently don't keep any sense of how would I say it? Basically any sense of, you know, making sure that everything's all good, that everything's taken care of. It's always wound down to pollution. You can ask the people of Flint, Michigan, you can ask the people of Corpus Christi, Texas, you can ask the people of my Dene relatives of the Navajo Reservation. There's the same consistency. These people are struggling, and this is happening all over the world. And at the end of the day, like many of my relatives, the Black Hills are very sacred, and so is all of Turtle Island and even our reservations. And we have been in this long-standing issue of really working towards developing a platform for us to be at peace and be as ourselves. And this is another issue that brings up that conflict. We know what's going to happen, and it's going to keep happening unless we stand up and take the steps. And the only thing I would like to be able to say to you guys entirely is that you'll always hear concepts about being the change. And you have to basically be able to see, like, hey, this is not okay. This isn't gonna pan out at all. It's been the same thing, whether it be the genocide that took place against my people. It's the same thing with every single other issue that has been constantly present within all of this society, all of this country, all of every single country. And I stand here entirely in opposition of uranium mining in the Black Hills. Ahomadaki.
Thank you. Next, we can have Cheryl Angel.
Good afternoon, my name is Cheryl Angel. I was born here in the Black Hills. I was raised in South Dakota. The past year I've been standing with people who want to defend land, who stood in defense of land and water at Standing Rock. We didn't do it for nothing. All these people here who came, they didn't come here for nothing. We have expectations. We have needs. And we're going to stand to make sure that the EPA doesn't approve this permit. Everything that I've heard, if I was sitting in your shoes, I would have already decided to not grant that permit. And that's just using my common sense. That's not using the scientific facts. That's not listening to the evolution of mankind and all the geography that, that Creator made to keep water clean for us. For tens of thousands of years, those aquifers have kept this land beautiful. It sustained all plant life, all animal life, all humanity for tens of thousands of years. Drilling into the Black Hills now, is only going to result in the same thing that has already happened, contamination. That alone speaks volumes. This area has been contaminated already, by allowing uranium mining. What part of that doesn't the EPA get? The people here know it. They know it. They understand it. They're living it. Why are we going to condemn? Why is the EPA going to condemn the rest of the people who are going to live here? Because that's what's going to happen if that permit is approved. You're condemning and you're allowing the contamination of the one thing that sustains us all, and that's water. It's a scientific fact. Water is life. I mean, who is the EPA and all of these people? Who are they to say that, okay, money is more better, money is more powerful, money is more influential than life? Then water sustains life. That's a scientific fact. There shouldn't be any question at all. Just look at the history. There shouldn't be any question at all of what uranium mining does to water, to the aquifer, to the people, to the landscape, to the future. There shouldn't be any question. So I'm glad you're having this hearing, because it falls upon you to use your common sense and to do the right thing and to use the facts to deny this permit, because that's the only result that makes sense. That's the only thing that we're asking you to do. That's the only thing that's needed to protect the Black Hills. My people have been here for tens of thousands of years. We didn't contaminate this place. This place was stolen from us. It's being occupied by people who want to protect it. They're standing with us now. We're standing as one for all humanity, for all plant life, for all life. We're standing up for you. So don't be afraid to deny that permit. Whatever courage you have, remember, you're not standing alone. You're standing up with thousands of people who want that water and who will back you up. So we're asking you to do the right thing. It shouldn't be too hard to do with all the facts that have been presented and all the testimony that's been given. Do what's right. You already know what it is. Don't fail us now. Do not fail us now, because we'll stand behind you. And we'll stand like this, because we're here to protect the land and the water for the future. Omidaki.
Thank you, Ms. Angel. Mine Gun Pamp. Can you spell your name for the record? Did we get it right? Thank you.
MIENGUNPAMP. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't have a big stack of facts or anything to present. I was sent here on behalf of others. I'm from Michigan, just kind of wandering around the state. But I was asked to talk about, taking care of the wells that have already been put in that are, poisoning people to this day. Maybe you don't believe that they're doing that, but it needs to be addressed all the same. It's still there. I'd obviously say no to any further actions like this, no more permits or anything like that. I thought it was funny that it was brought up that they said they were consulting with the tribes. I honestly just think that sounds like you're listening to us tell you no, and then you're going, oh, well, thanks for your input. And then, just go moving on from there. But what else was asked? Sorry. It's just a lot to think about. You know, I mean, like, if you look at the oceans and stuff from the last time something happened in this, it's not exactly like we're talking about oil or something that can be cleaned up a little bit easier. We're talking about something that's polluting mass amounts of water from one spill of something, you know, radioactive. So there's just so much, like, evidence that says that we shouldn't keep moving in this direction. And there's so many people that live in these areas that they can't go anywhere. This is their land. This is their home. Like, they have nowhere to go. They have no way to get there. Like, if this water, you know, goes bad, they have to stay. They have to deal with that. You know, I see it back home. You know, I've watched people from Flint. They have to go all over the place to try and start new lives because of what's happening there. It's just a bit of a touchy subject, but four things. I was also asked to discuss, let's see here, claiming, so. What is that? Oh, well, yeah, that's kind of out the window at this point. I just hope that you listen to all these people that have put forward all this evidence and, you know, listen to how passionately they speak about this, because these are the people that have to deal with the choices that you make here today. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pant. Gina Parkhurst.
I went to get some hot water. My name is Gina Parkhurst.
If you want to pull the microphone down, that helps you.
There you go. How's that? My name is Gina Parkhurst, and I've been a homeowner in Rapid City for the past 11 years. I oppose ISL uranium mining in Custer and Fall River counties because I'm very concerned about contamination of our groundwater. This area is prone to drought, so water conservation is a priority. South Dakota's two largest industries, agriculture and tourism, depend on adequate supplies of clean water. Excuse me. The United States Geological Survey, also known as USGS, has found that no ISL uranium mining operation has been able to return water quality to pre-mining cleanliness. The US NRC has been quoted saying that the restoration of an ISL mined aquifer to pre-mining water quality is an impossibility. There are a number of factors that indicate a mine in the Dewey Burdock area would likely result in contaminated groundwater. There are old uranium mines in the Dewey Burdock area that are not fully reclaimed, enhancing the risk of groundwater contamination. It will be impossible to have adequate oversight of the quality of liquid wastes pumped into the Menalusa Formation through the proposed deep disposal wells, resulting in likely groundwater contamination. The proposed mine and deep disposal wells are in an area that is documented to have faults, fractures, brecciapipes. In addition, over 7,000 old boreholes have not been properly plugged in the proposed project area. It will be impossible to contain mining fluids or waste liquids, and contamination of our groundwater is very likely. I urge you not to exempt a portion of the Inyan Kara Aquifer from the Safe Drinking Water Act. The Inyan Kara is used by many people and livestock, and given the aforementioned risk factors, water contamination is likely. And I've heard that the Menalusa Aquifer has 125 drinking water wells in the southern Black Hills that can be confirmed by the South Dakota Department of Environment and Natural Resources. with uranium mining, we need to keep in mind the fact that the half-life of uranium is 4.5 billion years. Yes, that is billion, as in B like in boy. Untold numbers of people living now and those yet to be born could be affected. As you are probably aware, in the 2011 legislature, South Dakota gave up its statutory authority to oversee wastewater aquifer injection in ISL uranium mines at the urging of PowerTech, now known as Azarga Uranium. Other types of mining in South Dakota, such as gold, oil, gas, are regulated much more thoroughly than ISL uranium mining. As a person with birth defects caused by exposure to toxic water while in my mother's womb at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, while my father served in the Marines, I had no choice about what kind of water I was exposed to. In my case, the brew of toxins resulted in birth defects that will forever affect my quality of life in significant ways. Is it fair to the unborn to allow ISL uranium mining to start when we know that the USGS has found that water quality has never been returned to baseline after ISL uranium mining? Who will protect the unborn if we adults fail to do so? I am not alone in my concerns. As you heard earlier, the South Dakota State Medical Association has stated their opposition to uranium mining in the Black Hills in direct response to PowerTech, now known as Azarga's proposed ISL uranium mine, making it the second statewide medical association to publicly oppose uranium mining in response to a PowerTech ISL uranium mine proposal in the past 9 years. And in 2013, the Rapid City Common Council passed a resolution expressing grave concern about the effect that this project might have on the Madison Aquifer, a major source of drinking water for Rapid City. Many Native American tribal organizations have issued statements opposing this project. In addition, local conservation districts have expressed concern. In closing, is the reward of a few dozen short-term uranium mining jobs worth the risk of 4.5 billion years of water contamination in this drought-prone part of South Dakota? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Parker.